Renault continues to invest in Moscow. Who benefits from localization of manufacturing? Entire car body sections are assembled here from thousands of small parts. Learning to live together, how the Accessible Environment program works.
Here, everyone tries to be understanding towards one another.
Moscow renovation standards, or the history of one big move.
We need to create a new urban environment.
I don't know about you, but personally, I need to plan things in advance, a week, a month in advance. It helps me get things done. And that's why the Moscow city government, it meets regularly to approve various programs, which all begin and end at different times. But their main goal is one, doesn't matter when it starts, when it finishes, that is to improve the economy and raise the standard of living. I'm John Harrison.
More and more Russian companies are coming to the idea of carrying out joint ventures with foreign partners. We are now in the factory of Renault Russia. This is a real example of localization of production facilities in Russia. And right now, we have a unique example to see how everything is carried out here. The history of relations between the French car manufacturing group and Russia dates back to the early 20th century. Members of the Russian royal family used to ride in the cars of this European car manufacturer. According to Autostat agency's ratings, Renault today is among the most popular car brands across Russia. This year marks a new phase in those relations. Renault Russia received a new development impetus at the end of last winter when Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin and Vice President and Director of Corporate Relations at Renault Group, Antoine de la Roche-Brachard, signed an agreement on the development of automotive manufacturing in Moscow. This is the welding department. Entire car body sections are assembled here from thousands of small parts. The Moscow factory works in 2 shifts. The full production cycle is completed within these clean, spacious rooms. The factory generally leaves a nice impression. More than 570 people work here. They fully assemble 35 cars every hour and more than 700 every day. As you can see, work is in full swing here. Each car requires about 700 different parts and more than 4,000 welded joints. By the way, all the welding is carried out without human involvement. This task was entrusted to robots. There are more than 80 of them here. As you can see, robotization is going full throttle here, just like everywhere else in the world. This year alone, the factory bought 46 robots just like this one. 20% of the work has now been done by robots, but we don't have to worry just yet. There's still enough work for us to do. The manufacturing process is controlled by an operator. The control station is equipped with scanners for safety. If the operator enters the area of robot operation, these scanners transmit an alarm signal to the system, and the robots stop working.
We have all kinds of sensors for monitoring the assembly process. If an operator puts in the wrong part in a hurry, the system will detect that. It will halt installation and assembly of defective car body parts.
Automation is literally everywhere. Even moving tools over from one station to another is done via special self-driving carts.
Our welding shop uses automated carts. It's a pretty safe means of transportation. They have special devices that can scan the areas in front and behind. If someone gets in the way of a cart, it stops and waits until they leave the danger zone.
Completely assembled and painted car bodies are moved onto the assembly department. It consists of 5 shops, people working here non-stop, assembling individual components into a complete vehicle. Now we're at the magical part of this factory called the marriage hall. I'm joking, of course. That's what workers call this particular spot here. What you can see here is how the car body is connected to the lower portion called the chassis. And then we have a almost completely assembled car. This process involves making thousands of small connections. The car assembly process is quite similar to how Lego kits work. The only difference is that the pieces that need to be connected here are much larger.
Each car has its own film, its individual identification number, the so-called vehicle logbook. Upon entering the assembly department, each car body is scanned. A special label is attached at each assembly point. This way we can easily see what kind of car it will be and what configuration options it will have. An operator can take a look at a label and instantly get information about what is being assembled here. So this is kind of like a vehicle passport.
All parts have now been assembled and a passport has been issued. The new car is then ready to meet its future owner. Now is the most important moment. We've been waiting for this throughout the entire process. All the bits and pieces come together to take the shape of a complete vehicle. This factory currently manufactures Renault Captur, Renault Duster and Nissan Terrano. And very soon a new SUV will be added to that list. The factory is currently under a special regime as it's preparing to launch a new model. The best person to tell us everything about that is General Factory Manager Jean-Louis Theron.
Thank you very much for meeting with us, Jean-Louis. I know you're a very busy man, so thank you for sparing some time for us.
You're welcome.
Can you tell us, just in a few words, the history of Renault in Russia?
We started in 1998.
1998?
Yeah, it was a JV between Moscow government and us, and
Right.
we have created Автофрамос. And so after we started to work on to create this plant, and we started to produce Logan in 2005. And now we are at 33 cars per hour. We have started at something between 7 and 8 cars per hour.
What is the potential of Russia for Renault?
For Renault, Russia, this is one of the biggest markets. And so you know that we are working with Lada and we're working with Renault. But for Renault brand, it will become, I think, the second world market of Renault.
So Russia for you then, for Renault, is a growing market?
Yep.
In that context, why do you want to localize production?
As you know, we are supposed to be at the beginning a French company, but now we are an international company. And a part of our DNA is localization. Simply because we don't know with the currency rate and so on how it will become. And so one of the decisions we have taken is to maximize localization ratio. So now we are at 66% and we continue to work. I am in charge of a working group in order to go further and further and further. But this is not only because of the exchange rate. What we're thinking is Renault Russia, this is a Russian company.
Thank you very much for this interview. It's a great honor to be here. And I hope everything works out for you in your job here at Renault.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jean. We're talking about different Moscow state government programs that are taking place in Moscow right now. And of course, the biggest one is the program called Renovation. Let's find out some more about this.
Andrei, could you tell us what the renovation program means for Moscow?
The renovation program was approved on August 1st, 2017. Soon after that, on July 1st, a corresponding law was adopted and signed by President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. The law serves as a regulatory framework for the renovation program. First of all, the renovation program was developed based on proposals from Moscow's residents and using input from various public organizations, the Civic Chamber of the Moscow government, and surveys from residential buildings throughout the city. Inquiries from over 250,000 residents were analyzed. And based on the current condition of individual buildings and the impracticality of their complete overhaul, by order of Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin, the renovation program was developed within a fairly short time frame.
How many new buildings is the city going to build for its residents?
We've selected about 300 sites with a total area of more than 4.5 million square meters. It's actually not a lot considering Moscow's current developed density. And I would like to note that all of my colleagues from various government agencies and administrative district administrations have been working very closely with residents. The people themselves have proposed development sites directly or via writing letters to the Civic Chamber.
And what's no less important, how will these new apartments look?
The renovation program sets very high standards in terms of housing conditions. An example of how these new apartments will look could be seen at a showroom in the urban forum held at the VDNH Expo Center in 2017. We actually had two showrooms. The first one was built for the forum, and the second one remained open for more than 6 months at the VDNH Expo Center and incorporated improvements suggested by Moscow's residents. We listened to people and established significantly high standards in terms of apartment layouts and finishing materials. And now we are closely monitoring compliance and those requirements.
Andrei, let's stop for a moment. We've made a small video review of the design of those new apartments. Let's take a look right now. Custom facades and expressive architectural design. This is the look of new apartment buildings currently being built under the renovation program. Living rooms are 18 square meters and bedrooms are 12 square meters. It's a standard one-room apartment. It might seem like it's the same old layout, but the total area of these new apartments is actually 20 to 30% larger, thanks to a larger kitchen. While in the old Khrushchev area apartments, people had to cook and dine in the 6 square meter kitchens, the kitchen area in these new apartments has been expanded to 8 or more meters. Each apartment has a balcony and PVC windows to protect occupants within from dust, noise, and winter cold. Almost all the buildings are equipped with AC racks and all have elevators. Everything is made of high-quality materials.
We're going to create a new urban environment in place of reconstructed districts. And by new urban environment, I mean a mixed environment that combines both offices and residential spaces. At least the first floors will be used for offices or businesses, for providing comfortable services for local residents. The second, but not less important issue is that of parking spaces. We need to get parking spaces under control so that people aren't forced to park in yards, in lawns, and in driveways.
I mean, the renovation program is not about individual buildings, it's about entire district environments. It involves constructing new playgrounds, landscaping, and all the necessary infrastructure. Yes, these new residential blocks look quite impressive. And which Moscow districts are currently being rehoused?
Currently, we are rehousing 6 administrative districts, and by the end of the year, the renovation program will cover almost all administrative districts. The first one was the Eastern District, then rehousing started in the Western District. Later, they were joined by the South and Southwestern Districts. In autumn, an extensive rehousing program was started in the Northern Administrative District, and soon we're going to start rehousing in the Southeastern Administrative District. Our main goal here, of course, is to fast-track the design and construction of pilot buildings, but without any negative impact on quality, so that residents can get a clear answer to their main question: when and where will we move? Because the program is approved and everyone is looking forward to moving into their new homes.
And how many buildings have already been commissioned?
Around 650,000 people are currently being rehoused. And by the end of the year, another 4,000 people will start moving into their new homes.
And how well are these new buildings adapted for people with disabilities?
All the buildings are well adapted for people with limited mobility. All entrances are level with the ground. Elevators, corridors, common areas. Everything has been adapted for people with disabilities. Additionally, the entire infrastructure of the new districts is built in accordance with recommendations from the Social Security Department to allow people with disabilities to fully enjoy all of its benefits.
Thank you very much, Andrei. Stay tuned for our next story.
Вы смотрите «Лучший город Земли». There's 15 steps here. For a completely normally healthy person, that's really no problem at all. But if you happen to be an invalid, this is a real barrier. There's 1 million invalids living in Moscow right now. What is the Moscow government doing to help them? Let's find out.
Let me introduce you to someone who has first-hand knowledge about the Accessible Environment Programme. By an unfortunate twist of fate, he became confined to a wheelchair and now must personally face accessibility issues every single day. Hello, Igor.
Hi.
Igor, you've been a social activist for many years. Now you can see with your own eyes how the city has been changing. Is it becoming more accessible?
Yes, it is getting more accessible. And it's happening at such a rapid pace.
Making an urban environment accessible is a complex task. Who's involved in the process?
If we're talking about the Accessible Environment Program, it's a multi-agency program. It's not under the authority of a single agency or ministry. It's being implemented by multiple government institutions. It's about the accessibility of public spaces, cultural institutions, and sporting facilities. But most of all, it's about the accessibility of government institutions and about gradually improving the accessibility of commercial properties.
So you've got a small company here. How's it coming along?
We were able to acquire this office thanks to the support of the government and most of all, the mayor of Moscow. What's interesting, though, you could call our organization a business, but at the same time, it has the status of an independent, non-profit organization. We do not distribute profits. Everything we earn, we spend on charity.
As far as I know, you travel a lot, and you've seen a lot of examples to compare Moscow with. Which countries and which cities, in your opinion, have the most interesting and best practices?
Most the European countries. In terms of accessibility, Germany and the UK are the best. I visited London, and at the Paralympics, for example, that's the best example to follow. It's very important not to merely create an accessible environment for people with limited mobility. It's also important to make these environments safe. In case of emergencies or terrorist threats, it's very important to make it possible for people with disabilities to quickly exit a building on their own without getting in the way of others.
Let's talk about the FIFA World Cup. Were you actually able to fully enjoy that sporting event?
As a matter of fact, I didn't simply enjoy football this year. I was working. The company called Café, which cooperates with FIFA, offered me a job. I was in charge of recording certain events during the games. I was an observer.
These days, everyone is talking about innovation. Do you see any innovations introduced into your field of expertise?
A lot of new means of transportation have appeared recently, such as different wheelchair attachments that allow moving around more quickly. There are also some innovations in creating accessible environments. For example, various devices that help people with disabilities in climbing stairs, so-called stair climbers. There are many interesting things, but creating accessible environments still requires some sort of an individual approach. Because when it comes to cultural institutions, it's important not to damage anything. Many of these buildings are years and years old, and it's important to make them accessible without damaging them or affecting their historical appearance.
And what about these schools and universities? How accessible are they now?
A lot has been done for that today. We're all for inclusive education, and when it comes to higher education institutions, a fairly large percentage of people in Russia study at universities, but very few of them are people with disabilities. And those disabilities are different. Those people may be visually impaired, hearing impaired, or mobility impaired. And creating barrier-free environments for all these people was one of the points in the so-called May decrees of the Russian president. I think that Mr. Putin has set a clear task here, and it's currently being executed pretty successfully. But today, it's often not necessary to physically attend a university. Today, we also have distance education. And that's a very positive factor. That said, I think there's still a lot of room for improvement. All the students are very friendly. Everyone tries to be understanding towards one another. And it doesn't matter if you're in a wheelchair or using a walker.
These are not just words. Students of Moscow State University of Humanities and Economics support each other in everything, not just in class, but also during free time. Most guys and girls with disabilities live in the dorm. They say it's more convenient. You don't have to waste time on commuting, and everything's within reach. And most importantly, students with disabilities have everything they could possibly need.
I visited many other universities in Moscow, and they usually have either classrooms or the dorms equipped for students with disabilities. But I needed both. So basically, this place is the best example of what they call an accessible environment.
There are very few universities that are properly adapted for students with disabilities. And in terms of accessibility, the Moscow State University of Humanities and Economics is definitely at the top of the list.
All the students here have equal rights and equal opportunities. The entire infrastructure of the university has been designed with students with disabilities in mind. Take the main entrance, for example. It has ramps to allow unrestricted access for people in wheelchairs, or otherwise mobility-impaired people who require special devices to move around. They all can easily enter the building. You may have noticed that we also have wheelchair lifts installed at the entrance. So we have a truly accessible environment here at our university.
Classrooms, the dorm and the dining hall are all under the same roof, so students don't even have to leave the building. Thanks to the barrier-free environment, students with disabilities can attend our university on equal terms with everyone else. Elevators, comfortable handrails and wide classroom doors allow students to feel comfortable and easily move around the university. The university has 6 departments. The most popular among the students are law, journalism and linguistic facilities. Here you can learn English, German, Spanish, or even Turkish. And some of the professors are even native speakers.
This year marks the 10th anniversary of our department. At first, it was called the Turkish Language Department. 3 years ago, it was renamed to the Department of Oriental Languages. We teach future interpreters and linguists. Our major language is, of course, Turkish. The second language is English.
Students from many countries come to study at this university, including students with disabilities.
I love Russian culture and literature. I want to travel here.
Over the past 25 years of its existence, the Moscow State University of Humanities and Economics has trained more than 1,000 qualified specialists and gained a reputation of being one of the most popular universities in Moscow. Well, today we've had a look at various government programs here in Moscow. I hope it's been interesting for you. I'm the host of Capital Ideas program. Goodbye for today.